What is the worst thing that you've ever lost? A phone full of photos, a first edition signed copy of your favorite book, your keys just as you're running late for an important meeting? We lose things all the time, but none of those things can compare to what the musician Orpheus lost, not even his music. But that's exactly what happened to him after he failed to heed the warning from the god of the underworld. Let's get into it. Orpheus was famous throughout the ancient world for two things: his beautiful lyre and his gorgeous singing voice. With his instrument, he could charm birds out of the sky, coax vines up the trunks of trees, and calm raging rivers. And while he was usually joyful and lighthearted, he was inconsolable when his beloved Eurydice died. She was bitten by a venomous snake while picking flowers, and there was nothing Orpheus could do to save her. So, like any reasonable person who's just lost their soulmate, he decided to journey to hell itself and bring her back. Now, this was hot, hard, dangerous work. So, before he started his travels, he appeased the gods of the wilderness with prayers and offerings. Then he walked through fields of asphodel, which, if you know anything about Greek mythology, was like the last place you wanted to be because it was the home of the spirits of those who had lived ordinary lives. And so they spent their afterlife wandering aimlessly in these vast, featureless fields. It was painful for Orpheus to see so many restless souls around him, but he pushed on, determined to bring Eurydice back home. After 4 days of walking, he finally reached the banks of the Styx, the 5 rivers that marked the boundary between earth and hell. Each river represented a different aspect of the human experience and had to be crossed in order to reach the underworld. To cross the first river, the Acheron, Orpheus played a mournful tune on his lyre. This song so moved the boatman Charon that he ferried Orpheus across without even needing payment. In fact, the only time we see Charon actually charge someone for his services was in Dante's Inferno when he demanded the poet pay in blood. The next river was the Minos, where Orpheus encountered another horrible sight: the souls of criminals chained together in groups of 3, forced to pull a bronze plow across the field of asphodel. They were doomed to drag their heavy load forever, and the more they pulled, the further away from their loved ones they became. Seeing their pain, Orpheus felt a twinge of sympathy, but he also knew that if he didn't keep moving, he might become like them. So he continued on his journey, leaving their moans behind him. To cross the third river, Phlegethon, Orpheus wove magical garlands for Persephone, the queen of hell and the embodiment of spring. As the story goes, she had been gathering flowers when Hades, the king of the underworld, kidnapped her. Demeter, her mother and the goddess of the harvest, was furious. She searched everywhere for her daughter and cursed the earth so that no plant would ever grow again. The people suffered through a long, harsh winter and begged Demeter to let them grow food. Finally, she agreed. But once a year, she would be overcome with grief at the thought of her missing daughter and would pull all the greenery out of the ground, plunging the world back into winter. That's where Persephone came in. By weaving her garlands, Orpheus appeased the young queen, and she allowed him to pass safely onto the 4th river, the Lethe. Here he saw the souls of those who had led unreflective lives and had forgotten everything about their time on earth. They wandered around the riverbank in a fog, completely oblivious to their past. If this was what Eurydice had become, Orpheus vowed to bring her back. All she had to remember was their love, and he would make sure that she never forgot. So Orpheus crossed the final river, the Styx, and arrived at the great gates of hell. Here he stopped to prepare himself for the most challenging part of his journey. His beloved was waiting for him just on the other side, but he knew that hell was full of suffering and death and all kinds of temptation, so he made a pact with himself. He would not look back until he had Eurydice safely back on the earth. When the gates opened, he stepped inside and began his ascent up the mountain of the same name. As he climbed higher and higher, he could hear the cries of the damned echoing around him. Every step was harder than the last, but he told himself that the hardest thing was always the beginning. Once he got to the top, everything would be easy. Well, except for that whole not looking back thing, but he could handle that. As the sun set over the horizon, casting long shadows around him, Orpheus remembered how much Eurydice had loved the sunset. How peaceful she had looked watching the sky blaze with color as day turned to night. At that moment, he couldn't help himself. He had to seek a view for himself. Just one quick glance wouldn't hurt, right? Well, maybe it would. As soon as Orpheus turned around, Eurydice was gone. But it wasn't like she had vanished into thin air. She was still there beside him, only now she was translucent and surrounded by a white light. As she rose higher and higher above him, Orpheus realized what was happening. His one moment of weakness had sent his beloved back to hell, and now she was being escorted to the highest peak of Mount Olympus by Hermes, the herald of the gods. There, she would live with the other blessed souls forever, while Orpheus was left behind on the mountain of Styx with nothing but his music. Devastated by his loss, Orpheus did the only thing he could think of. He poured all of his sadness into his music. The notes poured out of him like tears, and the song echoed through the halls of hell. The condemned lifted up their heads and listened to the haunting melody. For the first time in centuries, they remembered who they were and what they had lost. They remembered their children's faces, the warmth of a lover's embrace, the simple joy of a sunny day. But then just as quickly, the memory faded and they were plunged back into their dark despair. Even Hades and Persephone paused in their revels to listen to the heartbroken man on the mountain. Persephone couldn't bear to hear his song. She covered her ears and hid her face. She knew how it felt to be trapped between two worlds, unable to move forward or go back. Meanwhile, Hades found himself tapping his foot and nodding along. The song was so good. But then he looked down at Persephone and saw that she was crying. Immediately, he stopped enjoying the music. In fact, he got so angry that he sent a swarm of wasps to sting Orpheus and drive him away. But the musician wouldn't leave until Eurydice was gone. He kept playing until the first rays of dawn touched his lyre. At that moment, a small smile appeared on Persephone's face. She had been moved by the depth of Orpheus's love, and she asked her father for a chance to speak with him. When Hades heard that, he laughed and tossed his head. "You want to speak with that loudmouth? No way. Go ahead, kiddo, if that's what you want." So Persephone descended from Olympus and approached the exhausted musician. She told him that his music had touched even her cold heart, and she wanted to reward him for his devotion. Orpheus looked at her and asked, "Can you bring my Eurydice back to me?" Persephone shook her head sadly. "No, your love for each other was beautiful, but the bargain your father and I made was absolute." "You had her back, didn't you? Then why didn't you hold on to her?" Orpheus slumped down on a nearby stone, defeated. "I didn't mean to break our pact, I swear," he said. "Oh, I know you didn't, but rules are rules. And besides, you've learned your lesson now. Your Eurydice is gone, but you have all of your music. Use it to honor her and never forget the lessons you learned on the mountain of Styx." And with that, she disappeared as quickly as she had come. Orpheus wasn't sure if he could go on living without Eurydice. Maybe he should go to hell and join her. But then he thought of all the people he had met along the way, the condemned souls, the sad Persephone, even Hades. His music had touched them all. Maybe that's what his gift was for. He wasn't meant to use his music for himself, but for everyone else. And that's how Orpheus spent the rest of his life, traveling the earth and bringing beauty and joy to everyone he met. In today's video, we explored the tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice, a story about love and loss that has resonated with audiences for centuries. We hope you enjoyed this retelling of the classic myth. If you did, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.